we're happy to announce our second live event this year. On Tuesday, the 14th of November, we're going to be hosting Alex Lelch from Lelch Audio, also the owner of the Lowlands, a new wedding event center in St. Paul. Jordyn DiOrio will join me as a co-host for the first time. She is the podcast host of The Refund, and we're going to ask Alex all kinds of questions about being a serial entrepreneur, his immigration story to the United States, as well as starting two businesses and running both of them. So if you're interested in all things business, as well as a networking event within the construction industry, please join us that night. Again, that's the 14th of November. All details can be found at CuriousBuilderPodcast.com. This episode is brought to you by the Scout Guide Minneapolis. The Scout Guide is a curated guide of Twin Cities' hottest spots, companies, people, venues, and events, focusing on all things local and small business. When you pick up their magazine, it just feels different. You open up the ads, and they're not just, the team in front of the building with your normal photo. It's vibrant, it's unique. It might even be set in a completely unusual setting, something that catches your eye and not only tells the story in a picture, but lets you know that that's a company that you want to go visit. Look for something different this year. Pick up the Scout Guide. You won't be disappointed. And if you're looking for advertising, I'd highly recommend it. They have an incredible social push. One thing that I was really interested in is that they will go to your events. They will go to your place of business. They will ask you questions that they then post on their feeds, and they have quite a following. Find them on social media platforms at the Scout Guide Minneapolis.
Ideas are great, but everything is all in just the delivery and execution of it if you bring it to life. At first, when I closed my jewelry business, I thought it was a failure, and I was like, no, I have all this experience, and I wouldn't have done it if I didn't try. So it's just you tried, and most people can't even say that they tried.
Welcome to the Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today I'm joined with Jordyn DiOrio. Welcome, Jordyn.
Hi, Mark. We're back again.
A second time. So, hey, Jordyn, have you ever done an amazing 1-hour podcast before and then not hit record?
Yes. That was with you, actually. It's so funny you bring that up.
I know.
I'm here again.
I know. We'll try not to recreate the best interview of all time with no audio.
No pressure.
We should really lip sync it next to our video that we're going to do now and see if people can read our lips to see what we're doing.
Well, I will say this round, I feel like it's better because you have a better camera, because when we recorded this the first time, I looked like a Victorian woman who was suffering from the plague. So this video, if people watch the video, I look way better in this version.
And honestly, it was it was black and white.
Yeah,
it was that bad.
And
you were
summer.
action. And my camera was the host was looking great.
You looked like Ken. You truly looked like Ken. You were perfectly tan. And I was like, what is going on here? So I'm happier that the visuals are better. So
They're way better. They're way better. We're back for a second round, and you have a consulting and fractional CEO company.
Yes.
I met you at BizCom for the first time. Was that a year ago?
I think it is. Man, has it only been a year?
Was it 2 years? Oh, no, it was 2.
Was it 2 years ago? I honestly,
it was a year. It was a year because I went to Nashville for the Contractor Coalition in May, and I met you after that because I'd already met Brad and Morgan at that.
Yes.
So it was about a year ago.
Wow, it's only been a year. Why does it feel like that was 10 years ago?
A lifetime. Because I stress people out and put what?
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, the amount of stress I put you under. So I've hired you, obviously.
Yes.
Well, not obvious. It's obvious to me, not to the audience, I guess, because you do fractional CEO work. I felt like a real need for some restructuring, and now I have a much clearer vision of what I want the company to be than I did previously.
I hope so.
I need some systems, and I feel like just having an outside perspective on our company, and you've been amazing to work with. We're
awesome.
3-4 months into our working relationship.
And I'm not holding a gun against your head to say this by any means, just for a visual. He's saying this because he wants to, right?
She's Italian. It'd be like a stiletto. It would not be a gun, to be clear.
That's true. Or like a little stiletto where the heel is a gun. You know what I mean? I should invent those. Yeah.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about that last time, I believe. Well, tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and why you like to fix broken companies. And let's start there.
Oh man, where to start? Well, I was born in. I'm just kidding. We're not going to go that far back. I feel like I was meant to be an entrepreneur because I've never felt like I fit in anywhere, and that's not meant to be in I feel bad for you, but more so entrepreneurs always feel this sense of not really fitting into a box or fitting into a role or fitting into XYZ. And I don't think I've mentioned this to you, but I think it's important to bring up that I actually started my first business when I was 16, and it wasn't formally formed, but when I was in high school, I had this company that was called April Fool's Bags because my birthday's April 1st. I didn't really understand branding, but what I was doing was I was taking these tote bags and I was like printing artwork and I was like ironing the artwork onto totes and I was giving them to like teachers and friends for fun. It's probably like copyright infringement because they were like famous like Peter Max art pieces I was putting on bags. Anyways, I think I've just always been really crafty and I've always had this need to make or create something. So I feel like being a business owner started when I was 16, when most people were like, I don't know, getting their first kiss or getting their driver's license. I instead was like,
starting a business.
yeah. And then even just throughout my career of like, I went to school for marketing and that's what I did for a long time. And I feel like I'm a professional project manager coming from a really big family. I'm one of 7 out of Chicago. I just feel like I've always been managing a bunch of things all the time. So, went into marketing, I studied it, and then I ended up in the agency world for a while. And then I started my first official business. I say in quotes because my first business was this bag company. So then I started my jewelry business when I was 23 and within that, and I did it because I couldn't afford my MBA. I wanted to get my master's and I had like pitched the president of this agency to like pay for my master's, which is like LOL because agencies probably don't have the budget for that. They're not like Best Buy. And he gave me some really good advice and he was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to run my own business. He's like, you don't need to get an MBA to do that. He's like, you just do it. And I was like, oh, amazing advice from some. And, at first I was disappointed. And then I was like, oh, I now have the freedom to kind of do what I want. So started that jewelry business. It was called Men's Jewelry. And then within my first year, just through my network, you talk about this all the time, like the power of your network, the power of people. I got sought out for venture capital. And by the end of my first year.
So they sought you out?
Yeah. So
What was it about you that was so attractive that they're like, oh, we need to give this lady money?
That's exactly what they said. Honestly.
She needs money.
Give her money.
You clearly look like you need a lot of money.
Give her money. I wish that was the case. It was the business partners saw somebody wearing a piece of my jewelry and the person was like, oh, I know the owner. She's great. He must have said some nice things about me. He referred me to her. And then I met this woman and her husband and I pitched them at a pancake shop. Actually, the original Pancake House.
Which one?
What can you? I'm so directionally challenged.
There's one just off of Highway 7 and 101, but there's also one in Edina, which I think is the original one,
so,
like off of Crosstown in France.
It's a big location. I think it's got to be the first one you said. It's like a bigger location. Okay. And I remember I pitched them and I had like a deck put together, which is because again, I worked in marketing. So like I know the art of the pitch and like what gets people to say yes to you. And I pitched them. I like laid my jewelry out on the sticky table where there was like syrup and stuff. And they were just like, wow, like they were both successful self-made entrepreneurs. And they were like, we want to invest, $250,000 for the next 2 years for you to run this full time. And I was like, what? So we could talk about that, getting funding, but ran that business. Total of 7 years, 2 years fully funded where I took a salary. And then I actually just dissolved the business this year just because of COVID. And I learned so much from it. And I just don't love retail. But I basically, for the past 7 years, got my MBA and it was paid for, which is kind of funny how full circle things are. And I've taken that experience of running that business. I had a stint in, public tech where I learned a lot about acquisitions, corp comm. And then I've kind of taken the leap where I can take all the experience I've had, whether it's running my own business or, working within really big businesses that are trying to grow and scale into my own practice where I'm really just a professional problem solver with my consulting arm where I just help clean up the messes and just help keep more businesses around. So, wow, that is as short of a cliff notes as I can.
That was pretty good.
And to really top it off, I'm an Aries, which means I'm fiery and independent. I'm an Enneagram 8, which is the challenger, so good luck trying to win a fight with me. An INTJ, the J stands for judgment and Jordyn. And then there is one more. Oh, I'm a manifester. I've taken all the assessments, so I'm a lot.
But which one's the best? Insight?
Oh, and Insights. I'm a red. I'm a red,
red yellow,
but primarily red dominant. And red is like one of my favorite colors. So it's
the
all the things.
Whole world's coming together for you.
Yeah, I'm a lot, but I wholeheartedly accept that I'm a lot. And if you like it, great. If you don't, that's okay. That's just how it goes.
So it's interesting. There's a lot to dive into there.
Yes.
Let's start, I guess, in the very beginning with taking venture capital. I think it's
Yeah.
very exciting. I mean, people watch Shark Tank. I actually know you're a huge fan of it.
Yes.
I was actually watching some last night. Went down the YouTube wormhole of
Yes.
watching some of Mark Cuban's early days and
Yes.
just watching them negotiate. It's always, I know it's very interesting as an entrepreneur, and frankly, it's just good. It's good TV. It's very entertaining.
Yes.
But I guess my question for you is, venture capitalist always sounds really sexy and really cool. Like, oh, someone's going to give me money. And,
Yep.
we recently just bought some land with an investor. So for the first time, I've had this investor that past client of mine who wants to buy some land. And so I've, what kind of return do I have to give them? Because if
Right.
it was a bank, I would just go do the bank
Yep.
and it's actually going to be less. So what is the appeal of venture capitalism money? So it must be that a bank either won't give you the money because you're too young and have no actual assets, which is what I'm guessing happened
Literally,
with you.
they're like, show us a balance sheet. And I'm like, what's a balance sheet? You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right. So walk us through a little bit of what does venture capitalism mean for those that aren't in a
Yeah.
corporate setting or don't deal with this on a day-to-day basis?
I would say, yes, venture capital is very sexy. We hear about it all the time and we think like Silicon Valley. And I would say my experience is like such an anomaly because one, like women don't typically get venture capital. There's some like crazy statistic on like there's, hundreds of millions of dollars that get invested and like a very small fraction go to women. And my investors are angel investors. So the difference between that is they're angels in the sense of like, if I couldn't return the money, I didn't owe them anything, which is like it's very unheard of.
That's the difference. Oh, I'd always heard that. I always thought venture capitalism and angel investor was the same. But an angel investor is essentially, here's a gift to you, hence like an angel. But if you don't repay me back, there's no penalty clause. I just believe in you that strongly that I know you're going to do the right thing. I know I'm willing to lose this money for a good cause.
So that's how I interpreted the angel investment piece. It could show up differently. So I feel like venture capital, I think the most important thing about funding in general is you have to like understand, well, one, who are the people that are giving you money? Why are they giving you money? Being super explicit on what is their return. Because also we had a 60-page operating agreement. There was equity negotiations. Like they wanted to see a return on their investment because it would benefit them. So it's not that they just threw money at me and I was just like spending it. It was I had to do everything in my power to see if we could see a return on their investment. But if I didn't, that lessened the risk for me because, I'm 23, I'm out of college, I've got $60,000 in debt. Now you want to add $250,000 in debt, and I've never run a business before,
Right.
and no one's taught me financial literacy up until this point. It's all just been self-taught. But I think in general with venture capital, we hear horror stories all the time, regardless of what type of investment or funding you get. And I think the most important thing is that whenever you find somebody interested in investing in your business, it's important that you, one, are on the same page on what you're trying to get out of it, and two, are your values in alignment. I mean, I call my business parents, but my business partners we had the same values. They were both self-made, both successful in their own right as business owners, and they really just wanted to put me in the driver's seat to see what happens when they give a young woman an opportunity that wouldn't have had it otherwise, to see if they can really grow it to its full potential. And I remember asking them, I was like, why are you giving me money? Like, why are you doing this? Because I'm skeptical. And I asked them this when we were at the pancake house, and my husband's like hitting me underneath the table, like, don't squash this. I'm like,
was Max your husband?
no,
at the
not
time?
yet. But
Okay.
yeah, he was my now husband.
So now you bring your boyfriend to that.
Oh, yeah, because I was like, these people want to give me money. Can you just make sure I don't get like kidnapped?
At the pancake house in Edina.
Literally, you don't know. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
even my parents were like, this sounds like a scam. Come from a very skeptical family, but that's fine. And honestly, like what they said to me was they had said something along the lines of like, there comes a certain point in your life where success isn't tied to a dollar amount or material things that you have, but how much you can help people and how much you can give back. And that was really powerful to me because it now has instilled in me that I want to become that person where, right now it's all about like your revenue and all these things that you can bring in. But at what point can I be so successful that I can give somebody an opportunity, and the dollar amount doesn't matter, but it's how many people's lives did I change? And you interview a lot of people on this podcast who have that impact. Just like Mark from Joy Collective is what I'm thinking about. Obviously very different, but it's the concept of like success is about helping other people however you can. So venture capital, the phrase is true, more money, more problems. It just puts a little bit more pressure on delivery, and you now have people at the table that will make decisions. for the business. Like they have a vote, just like if you were to have a board of directors in your company. So I'd say just be smart, make sure there's a contract in place, understand what you're willing to give up, whether it's equity, profit sharing, all of that stuff. Just do your homework.
What did they ask for out of curiosity?
So this is so funny. So when we were negotiating, I say negotiating, we were sitting at my business partner's offices in Deep Haven, which are so beautiful. We had like their like kind of attorney person sitting at the table, me and my now husband sitting next to me. I hired an attorney, they hired an attorney. And when it came to equity split, I just set a number based on like what I've heard on Shark Tank. And it was important to me to be a majority shareholder, but I was generous in the percentage they got because I wasn't precious about my business. I was more like, oh my God, I'm getting an opportunity of a lifetime. Like, what seems fair? I set a percentage and they were like, okay. And like, so to me, I was like, that also is an indication that that's not why they were in it.
Right.
They were in it to just put me in a position to thrive.
So they had an equity position for their $250,000.
Yes.
So there was no tie like, hey, we need a 10% return or any of those kinds of things.
Nope. It was
just, we're going to own a whatever the number was, 20%,
we're gonna own,
quarter, 30, whatever it is.
We're going to own a percentage. But I will say what they taught me that was like, at first really hard, but now it's given me kind of business resilience is like every month I was put in the hot seat on like my report. So like at first I was doing all my own like accounting and like reporting through QuickBooks, and that made me want to shave my eyebrows off because like, you're in marketing, like you don't think you're allowed to know those things, especially as a woman. Like, how dare I know or just being so afraid of the finances. And they really taught me to embrace it. And so anytime I'd be sitting in a meeting with them and I'd be in the hot seat about like, why are sales like this? Why did we spend money on this? And at first it was really terrifying, but I've gotten to a point now where like I could tell you where every single penny goes in my business, why it goes there, how much I've spent, how much we've made, why do we hit our goals? And that's so valuable.
So by keeping you with those monthly check-ins, it really brought accountability awareness on top of actual accountability, but it's more the awareness of it, right?
Yes. And like I would send weekly recaps to, so the woman it was a couple, the woman was really like a strategic partner. I would send her weekly recap. Here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm doing. Like, there's such an accountability piece that I loved where she wanted to be involved and she wanted to have influence, which I love because there was like a mentorship piece that I got in the investment, which not everybody gets. Sometimes people just like get the money and then they don't see their business partners until the bills are due.
I'm just putting myself in this couple's place. Yes. I'm guessing they were impressed at your presence. They were obviously first drawn away by your jewelry design because that's what caught their eye first. It was like the product was good.
Yes.
But then obviously they must have met you somehow, some way and said, like, how did they meet you? How did they track you down?
So the person who was wearing my necklace was the wife of someone I worked with in the marketing agency world. So when I launched my jewelry business, my sales tactic was to go up to all the men in the office. And I was like, do you love your wife or girlfriend? Then you should definitely support my business. So all the men in the office were buying my stuff.
So this is basically a side hustle.
Yeah, it was totally a side hustle. And I think the person who referred me, he's a great guy I know to this day. And he was really like a mentor to me in the agency world, which that industry is just so hard. You don't make a ton of money and you're working super hard. And I was just fresh out of college and he was really great. And I really appreciate just the relationship him and I built. So he was the one that kind of made the connection. And then she reached out to me for coffee. And I was like, oh, awesome, another mentor. Like, I'll take more people to help me. And then
and you're 23 at this time?
Yes. And then I remember I met her at the Galleria in Edina, which I had never been to before. And I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm in France.
Do you know that's the oldest mall in the country?
Really?
I'm pretty sure that's right.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of funny because right now malls are falling by the wayside. No one wants to be at a mall. But that one is because it's so boutique and so high end.
Yes.
But I think I'm pretty sure I heard that was the oldest mall.
That's awesome.
People might have to fact check me.
Yeah,
on that.
we'll need a fact checker.
Yeah.
But I met her at the Starbucks, if that's still there, in the Galleria, and it kind of felt like very European. I just remember meeting her, and this like just beautiful blonde woman was wearing all my jewelry when she sat down, which was like really cool because she bought a bunch of stuff beforehand. And her and I just started talking, and we were like, when you just like you click with somebody. It's like the new iPhone feature, when like the two phones. Have you seen the new feature? So if you want to transfer your contacts to somebody in the new update, you just like tap the phones and this like thing happens where it vibrates and like you just get the contact information. It's a terrible analogy, but essentially her and I clicked is what I'm trying to say, plugging Apple's new software update, which may be outdated by the time this comes out. Doesn't matter. But her story was really amazing. She's one of those people that like you feel like you're the only person in the room when you talk to her. And I love those people because they're just so locked in.
They're so present.
Yes. And she's a successful financial wealth planner, didn't have her background in that, like very much a just really inspiring story. And she just said to me, like, it's been a bucket list item of mine to like invest in a woman in business and you're it. And I was like, oh my God.
That's funny because, we'll get into this a little bit. You have a podcast called The Refund.
Yes.
And we'll talk a little bit about that with Sarah Schultz.
Yes,
I always call her Hey Sarah Schultz. Like her first name should be Hey. But anyway, Sarah Schultz.
The branding works for her.
It does.
There you go.
But I'm just thinking of, you guys talk all the time, about female ownership and how you want to refund these ideas that, pop culture, just culture in general needs to be refunded because they're not accurate.
Yeah.
But because I feel like one of your goals, correct me if I'm wrong, you've never said this, but I bet one of your goals is to do the same thing that was done to you.
100%. I want to have my own fund.
And so it'd be interesting to know your investor's backstory because someone must have either helped her or somehow there's a story there too. We won't go into it now, but I bet there's a story there because we're inspired to, at some point in our lives, we're inspired to either replicate or avoid what happened to us.
Well, yeah, and there's something about, I think it's probably just our stories are somewhat similar, is just kind of just hard working gals that have sharpened their teeth and just been through just harder times. And I mean, everybody has their own kind of challenges, but I think there's probably something to her just wanting to give back after maybe not having as much as she, did at my age. And I think it just always goes back to like, some of us want to be the person that we didn't have at that point in our life. And I think that's important to me too. And that's why I either will try and hire younger people or mentor, students, because it's like, you want to be that person that didn't exist at that time.
Do you feel, although you're being paid for this, if you want to go pro bono with me, I'm fine with that. Do you think that there's a part of that psychology that makes you so effective as a consulting and fractional CEO? Like, let's use me as a case study. As you are helping us become better than we are.
Yep.
Even though it is a fee for service pay, to be clear out there. Do you feel like there's some part of that where like, hey, I'm helping this person become better than they are? Is that somewhat of this similar feelings, or have you never really thought about it in those terms?
I don't know if I've really thought about it that way. I just think in general, the work that I do, I know it's going to be hard. I'm kind of a glutton for pain, but I think like I just feel this, and I know you feel this way too, this just like immense responsibility to leave things better than you found it always. And that doesn't mean it's going to be easy and it's going to be hard. And in the moment, you may not feel the ripple effect, but maybe like a year, 2, 5, 10 years from now, you'll kind of see that impact.
I thought it was interesting. You had mentioned when we first started working together, you kind of start with like a 3-month contract and you won't go longer than that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically you are testing out in those first 3 months of, is this person or is this company open to change? Because if they're not, they're wasting their money. And I also don't want to be a part of it. Is that accurate? For
sure. I think change is super hard and everyone says they want it, but then they're in and they're like, oh, this feels really hard and icky and I don't want to do it. And yeah, not everybody is ready for change, or it's like change, but I like to use the word transform because it is a transformation. Like that is part of change, and sometimes change is a scary word, but like, and I'm not the one to say like, oh, you have the capacity to do it, but I just like to see what people's appetite is for like risk and ability to make big decisions, and some people just aren't ready for it, and that's okay. But I don't want you to pay me then. Right. I'm not interested in taking your money to pretend that I'm going to fix things when maybe it starts with the leader at the top. And if I can't fix that, I'm not going to work with you. And that's okay.
This episode is brought to you by Adaptive. Adaptive is an AI technology that we use for all our cash flow management. If you're in construction, you know how difficult this is. The days of importing all your invoices, cost coding them, asking 10 people in your office where they get coded, is this job approved, is this invoice approved, making notes, all of that is now done through AI. Your invoices get automatically uploaded. After that, all you have to do is cross-check its accuracy per the jobs. This is now saving us hours per job per month because with a click of a button, you can now have the draw process automated, which has been a complete game changer. On top of that, it's going to track your lien waivers as well as your certificates of insurance, making sure that everyone is in compliance before their bills are paid. This is saving us hours and hours per job per month, all with a click of a button. If you want to know more, check out adaptive.build. Additionally, we interviewed Matt Covano on episode 15 of the Curious Builder Podcast. You can find out more about it on our website as well at thecuriousbuilderpodcast.com. This episode is brought to you by Pella Northland. For 19.5 years, I've been building homes, and 95% of all of my homes have used Pella windows. I couldn't be happier to call them a partner in our builds and our remodels. Whether you're an architect, a designer, or a remodeler, I'd highly recommend Pella windows. They can fit old homes, new homes, reclaimed, commercial, and really everything in between. Pella is a company that we trust and that we recommend to our clients. Additionally, in management, Peter and Ed have just been absolute fantastic people to work with, as well as mentors to me personally. So when it comes time to look for a window, I'd highly recommend Pella Windows. Find more at PellaNorthland.com. Also, if you're interested, you can hear episode 1 where I interview Peter and Ed together for a great listen on business and Pella Windows.
Have you, going back, just I guess we'll tie the knot on that. So how long did you work in your marketing agency and still have your side hustle with men? How long did that last before you quit your main job?
So I was working in the agency world, I feel like, for a couple years. But so I had started my jewelry business in 2017. And I feel like I started in February of that year. And then I had met my business partners in like September, October. And then I think it was like right after Thanksgiving, they had invested, which meant I got to take a salary. Took a very, very small salary. It was $50,000, and then after taxes and health insurance, it was like $38,000 a year to run my own business, because I didn't want all the funding to go to a salary. Which also the perception was, if you have funding, you must be rich, which is just such bullshit.
Because you're basically reinvesting all of it in the future growth of the company.
100%, and you're taking such a small salary, and I wasn't getting benefits, so I was just so happy when I got to see a dentist after I, But yeah, it was in less than a year of having my jewelry business, I got funded, which is it's just unheard of in general in the venture capital space.
Right, that's amazing. So then after that, then you quit your your normal job, and then Men was full time.
Yeah, and I do want to say, because so my jewelry business revolved around like crystals and like just woo woo is what I will call it. And I'm a very like pragmatic person, but I do also believe in this concept of like, you are what you think, you are what you say, and this concept of manifesting. And I like telling the story because I think it's really fun and magical. But the summer before, so that summer of 2017, when I was running my business on the side, super burnt out. I wasn't making any money. I mean, I used my $1,500 in savings to start this business, and asked all my friends to take photos, and I would gift people in jewelry. And I watched this. So I was feeling really down, and I don't know how I came across it, but I watched this famous Jim Carrey and Oprah interview. Have you heard about this? It's a really great interview. I love Jim Carrey. He's such a manifester, but he talks about how he visualized. So when he was a poor actor, he would visualize himself, at the big Warner Brothers studio. He would drive to the studio, sit in his car, and look at the studio and say, I'm going to be there one day.
Really?
And then he wrote himself a check for, I think it was $5 or $10 million, and he put it in his wallet, and he would look at it all the time. And what I love is he's you don't just write a check and go make a sandwich, but it's it's some sort of reminder of you'll make it.
That's
and
a great story.
5 years later, he gets Dumb and Dumber. That check is $5 million. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I need to do. So I wrote myself a check for $100,000 that summer, put it in my wallet, and then I would visualize myself at my marketing agency's all company meetings on Monday announcing that I was going to leave to run my business. And then I met my business partners, that number got doubled, and I showed them the check, and I was like, are you kidding me?
Did you sign the check?
Yes. And they just
So as long as you didn't deposit it and, bankrupt your company with the check, you were fine.
Yes, but it's so funny.
I like that. I think
great?
I might have to do that.
And then I remember it was announced at the all company meeting, and I had this out-of-body experience, and I was like, oh my God, it happened. And so to me, it's you don't just write a check and money comes, but it's the concept of what you believe, what you think about, what you visualize in the future will come to fruition through hard work and just putting it out there. So that's what I tell people. It's yes, I got funding through my network, but I also put that out into the larger universe, ether, and yeah, I'll write a check for $1 million. But I'm just such a proponent of again.
I love that. No, positive thinking.
It's a great interview, and I'll send it to you so you can link it.
But I love the idea too. It's also present. I mean, you're talking about being aware of your money on a weekly check-in and a monthly check-in. I also think having your goals, your aspirations, whether you're right. I mean, I've heard these stats all the time, right? Where if you a goal that's not written down is so unlikely to be achieved. And so it obviously skews this result. But what is it, 80% of goals that are achieved have been written down? Well, yeah, obviously, because if you think about it, you're not going to, if you don't write it down, there's not going to be any action or plan behind it.
100%. And I'm in a businesswomen's group that actually Katie Kath facilitates of JCath Design. Love her. She's been a client of mine. And we did this activity, it must have been 2 or 3 years ago, where at the end of the year, we did this activity where you dress up and show up as yourself from 5-6 years from now.
Oh,
And then you talk about, yes,
point
and then
of
you're going to
view.
show up as yourself from 5 or 6 years from now, or whatever the time frame is. And then you kind of answer some of these questions on who you're going to be 5 years from now. And because I am so just detail obsessed and orientated, like I designed a book and I like dated it for, 2026. This is where I'm going to be in my life, professionally, personally, and then like what this is going to be kind of like my guiding source of truth. And I like designed it. I printed it as a little booklet I made. And I'll look at it from time to time to like remind myself.
So how would you, let's just assume that most people want to be more successful or more relaxed or whatever their goal is. I mean, I guess if you want to be a surfer, you'd show up with like a surfboard and like, like no shirt on and a tank top or something. Maybe some zinc oxide on your nose.
But it was so funny because everyone showed up a little bit differently. I mean, I showed up, I like rented a designer suit, like a pantsuit, because I was like, I'm going to be
I love that you rented it. And you're like, I can't actually do this because then it's I rented it. How do you rent something that high end?
There's rental companies. So like Rent the Runway, you can like rent really nice clothing.
So I could rent like a $10,000 suit?
I don't know if it's that high price point, but it was like a nicer like suit that I wouldn't buy on my own. It was like pink and double-breasted. I think I have a picture of it. But it was funny because other people in my circle, one of them owns Honey and Rye, that bakery in St. Louis Park, and she's a good friend of mine. Love her. She's just incredible. She showed up in a robe. She's like, I just don't want to work weekends in 5 years, and I want to be relaxed and spend time with my family. And it was amazing. So like we all showed up. So it's this like concept of like visualizing, putting yourself out there, and then if you're in a networking group, it could be fun for your group that you're in to show up as yourself.
I met a couple of them. One of them is with Katie Cass, so she would know what to do. That would be awesome.
Yeah. So I'm such a proponent of like, you are what you think, you are what you believe. It's kind of like woo woo, but I'm a firm believer, and it's all energy.
One of the things I want to talk about a little bit here that you touch base on, I know a few people that they want to start their own company.
Mm-hmm.
And this person is not an entrepreneur, and you'll see why in a minute. I mean, I guess they are. I shouldn't say that because there's different levels of how this goes. And so they don't have a job and they have their business, but it doesn't make money to be self-supported, and it doesn't really work at all. Most entrepreneurs that I know, and the reason I'm bringing it up because it's like yours, where you have a job, and they almost always start with some sort of a side hustle or a side gig or nights or weekends.
Yes.
And until it's economically viable, plus it also shows you that you're willing to work, you're willing to put in the hours, you're willing to do, and it may fail, and that's okay. Like it's perfectly, I remember, actually it was my dad at the time who was a business owner, and I remember he sort of gave me permission to fail. I've talked about it several times on the podcast. And it was really after that, I feel like my mindset and my career really took off. Because it was like, you have permission to fail. Like, it's okay to fail.
Well, and it's to me, it's proof you tried. Like, that's proof right there, as opposed, and nothing drives me crazier when like ideas are great, but like everything is all in just the delivery and execution of it if you bring it to life. And I think, listen, at first when I closed my jewelry business, like I thought it was a failure, and I was like, no, I have like now I've gotten all this experience, and I wouldn't have done it if I didn't try. So it's just like you tried, and most people can't even say that they tried.
I was, that's funny. This is somewhat and that I guess just comes to mind now. My first job out of college, I graduated with a business degree in communication.
That's fitting. That's very
actually,
fitting.
there was a large company. I think I've told the story too, but basically, they didn't hire me because they said I had too much energy.
Oh my God, not a thing.
And it was for sales. I was like, oh yeah. It's like,
I am gobsmacked at the thought of that being a thing.
Yeah, there may have been some immaturity there, but that's fine. Anyway, long story short, I was selling copiers. And they put you through a sales. I loved it, actually. Selling copiers. I did it for about a year. Metro Sales. Shout out to them. They were great. And I loved it. It taught me a lot. You did about CRM software. If you make 100 phone calls and you book 10 appointments, you get 6 sales. Like, what is your conversion rate? So learning some of that, being persistent. I was never afraid to talk to strangers. So well before Malcolm Gladwell's book came out, I was definitely okay with talking with strangers. But anyway, I guess where I was going with that is halfway through, I just was not fulfilled.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had a lawn mowing business in college and in high school that I sold. And I was like, I can't work for I was wearing a suit every day. And I was like, I just can't do this. So anyway, long story short, I built a house on the side. as a side hustle, building a
That's
house, right?
hilarious.
And
That's your side
so
hustle.
I was driving a Jetta. I was wearing a suit, and then I'd drive to the job site. I would change in the car so I didn't come out of my car. Jetta is bad. I probably parked it down the street and walked to the job site so I didn't look
That's
like,
hilarious.
a total imposter and just a halfway imposter. And but I would print my large format plans at the office.
Yep.
The copier office.
Yep.
Because I didn't want to spend the money to go pay for it, right?
Yes.
So I was, like, hey, and then I got to learn those wide format machines, which are very
Yes.
expensive. And I remember printing them off, and people were just kind of like looking at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm learning how this large format, while I'm printing off like 20 pages of like a house blueprint, right? All to save like
Amazing.
$30. Anyway, halfway through, I quit my job. I sold my car, bought a pickup truck, got my building license, and that was 20 years ago.
Yeah,
But anyway, side
yeah.
hustle.
That's that's an entrepreneur. That's in your DNA. We're scrappy. And I always tell people, like, it's not easier to become a business owner in this day and age. I think it's just more accessible, and just like there's just like a skill set. You kind of have it or you don't. And just like, not everybody should be a doctor. Not everybody should be a business owner. There's just everything has its pros and cons. So you have to be willing to figure out
100%.
what it takes to get there.
I think there's oftentimes, my wife wishes I wasn't, because, one of the questions that we often talk about amongst ourselves in our networking groups is, how do you shut off your brain?
Oh, yeah.
And, I think there's a lot of perks to having your own business.
Yep.
But the idea that, you have set hours, you can go wherever you want, whenever you want,
Right.
is a fallacy. And so it weighs on you, and you care about people. Like, I
Yep.
employ 5 people and I work with hundreds of people. I
Mhm.
care about their families.
Yeah.
It is important to me that they also succeed and that they also do well. And
Right.
so, if you're not getting the sales, building a new home, or attracting the clients because your brand is not right, or your operations are not right, or whatever, it affects other people. And so now all of a
Right.
sudden, kind of that, what is it? Heavy is the weight of the crown, or heavy the crown, the weight. There's this
Terrible with expressions.
Yeah.
So whatever you say, I'm going to say that's right.
Yeah, something like that. Basically, your head is heavy when you wear that crown, because like the
Yes.
buck stops with you.
Yep.
If something really bad happens, my name's on the sign.
Correct.
And so it's kind of up to it's kind of up to me.
Did you just hear that?
I did hear
bloop?
that boop, but it looks like it's still recording and our audio is still going. So I'm gonna keep on talking.
Okay, and I see Doug. Is Doug supposed to be there?
Oh, he's just checking in. Look at he's waving. Now he's like embarrassed. He's like, I was
Hey,
just looking at him
Doug.
waving.
Doug,
Hey, Doug.
this can be on the blooper reel.
Yeah,
we
he's just checking in. He's making sure we did hear the boop. I do like the boop.
Okay. I do too.
Anyway,
We can edit that out, but I was just like, uh-oh.
keep it in.
Yes, the idea of like,
Just you have a lot of stress when you're an entrepreneur and you're caring
Yeah.
about what other people are doing.
well, and it's just unfortunately with this little thing called the internet, I think a lot of things are just, it's with anything. It's like a little bit glamorized. We only see the highlight reel. And I think it's really important that we're honest about what it means to be a business owner. It's really hard in the sense of, to that point, you are the decision maker. There are quote unquote, people call them sacrifices, but I think whatever work you do, there's going to be pros and cons that you have to make, and you have to be willing to be okay with that, because no job is perfect, no work is perfect, no business is perfect. And also, like, not everybody's meant to be a business owner, and not everything needs to be a business. Some things are just meant to be hobbies. I'm so kind of over this, like,
That's well
gluttonous,
said.
like, make all this money, bring in all these streams of revenue. Like, there are just some things that are meant to be, joyful. Like, I love coffee and I love baked goods, but I'm not going to open up a coffee shop, because the second I do, every cup of coffee is going to have a dollar amount on it that I know I have to sell, and I'm going to lose the interest in
I'm
it.
grinning ear to ear like a Cheshire cat right now, because I was in LA last winter for a wedding.
Yes.
And they had this place that was called anyways, they did boba tea, and
Yeah.
the Boba Guys was the name of it. And I looked into if they franchised. I was so impressed that I wanted to come back and have a side business. Forget the podcast, forget building. I'll do those
No.
too. I'm going to start a boba tea
Yes.
company. Oh, yeah. Luckily, they did not franchise in Minnesota. And I was like, it's too much effort to do it all. Because I had the same feeling
Literally,
6 years
yes.
ago with frozen yogurt.
No.
You remember Yogurt Lab down by?
I do.
There's
some in Illinois.
I
yes.
ate there a lot. Maybe when I stopped eating there is why they are out of business. But anyway, long story
You
short,
kept
I
them
was
alive.
that was also like right post. I was like 2012, 13. I actually,
Yes.
honestly enough, I went to an old past client of mine.
Yeah.
She had built 2 homes with me.
Yes.
And her name was Sandy. And I said, Sandy, what do you think about doing a frozen yogurt company? We actually we took a day together and we drove to everyone in the state. We tried them all. We ate them all. We asked all the questions. I had talked to franchisors out. I just couldn't stop myself. And then at the end of the day, Sandy looked at me and she goes, I have a question for you. And she was like, yeah, go ahead. She's like, who's going to run all these and do all this time? Because I just thought it was a great idea. It was just going to magically do itself. And I was like, oh, yeah. The time is still going to be the issue, is time.
Well,
so anyway.
Yes, honestly, there are just some things in life that are just meant to be enjoyed, and just enjoy them. You don't need to monetize them. That is okay to just enjoy the things in life. And I'm all for like having multiple streams of income so that you have more financial independence. But I just think there's this like pressure and glamorization of being a business owner that I just don't vibe with. And I think like I love it because it's challenging. You get to kind of be in the driver's seat. You have no ceiling. And you also work with really interesting people. You meet really amazing people. And again, it all comes back to like their stories and how they got started. So I just think, and even with our podcast, The Refund, Sarah and I definitely try to take an honest and fun approach where like, you don't have to take yourself seriously, but you can also be a smart, driven entrepreneur and still drive results and not take yourself so seriously, which I find is hard for some people.
Let's talk about your podcast. That's on my question list here, and I love it. You guys are in season 2, or you're on to season 3 now?
So we're on to season 3. Right. We're going to start filming at the beginning of next year, just because Q4. And Sarah she's got 2 babies, and she's got a little one, and we wanted to make sure that our schedules align and we do it. We're in the right frame of mind. So early next year.
It's just how our peers inspire us and kind of give shape to us. So. Just briefly, just to bring relevance, like I had been on a podcast a year ago, Brad Levitt's AFT Construction podcast.
He's got great teeth. You're on it. I've talked to him about it.
That's so funny.
He knows. I hope he's listening because he knows. I told him he's got great teeth. I need his guy or girl.
That's funny.
Or gal.
That's from all your sharpening your teeth comments.
Mine would be fangs, by the way.
That's so funny.
That was true.
So, but the point is like, so you're inspired by those that you listen to and those that you're on. So I, started a podcast 30 days after that, kind of not really with a lot of, I had a lot of energy, but not a lot of clarity on where it was going to go. It sort of took shape organically quite quickly. Mm-hmm. But your podcast came out. When did you guys first start? When was season 1?
Was that last year? So we've done 2 seasons, 2 live shows. I think we launched last fall.
It was very similar time.
Similar timing. I remember that. So last summer we filmed partially in New York and then did a live show in Northrop, and then we did season 2 and then a live show Galentine's Day in February of.
The reason I'm bringing it up, and this is why, because when we met at BizComp, we have to go back to the beginning because we forgot that whole thing, but which does need to be talked about. But so you had it going on, and so I was like, well, I was launching the podcast. I'm like, well, you're also launching at the same time. So we were talking about sponsors, how do you do it? But what was really that impressed me greatly was you had a live event.
Yep.
And it was very impressionable on me because now we're coming up on our second live event. Mm-hmm. And guess what? You're going to be my co-host.
Oh my God, what a great segue. Not even planned.
I know, right? So you're my co-host. And so I sat in the front row at a Lululemon next to your husband. And it was me and 90 other women.
Yes, you and my husband are the 2 males in the demographic.
And I had a great time.
Which I love.
Thank you for making me feel welcome. And it was a wonderful time. And so I realized that you can have great educational content and it's really in capturing. But you can also make it an event, entertainment. All those things can all be in one. And I think that seed must have, without me thinking about it, just was like, I can't remember if I was thinking about a live event before that or not. It doesn't matter. But from there, I was like, looking around. Okay, this is what you do. This is how you do it. Okay, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And it was, 6 months later, I did it with Jackson Schwartz.
Which is a fantastic show, which I was also at. That was a really, really good show.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I feel like I've actually attended some live podcast shows too. And but they're not business related. They're like comedians that have podcasts too. And
that would actually be funny, right?
Oh, it's super funny. But also though too, like we did it because a big part of our just purpose for the show is we want to connect other women-owned businesses and let them know they're not alone and that they can come and connect with some really rad, awesome people too and feel heard and kind of escape from the day-to-day. So it also just felt like a good alignment from an event, and we were just testing it. Everything we do is kind of a little bit of a science experiment.
Will you do another one?
Yeah, I think we'll do another one. We just don't know what it will look like. That's all kind of in the works. We want it to feel like an experience. At the Lululemon show, we had ear piercing, we did permanent bracelets. We just wanted to feel very experiential, which is really important. Because again, in a post-COVID world, you need to give somebody a really good reason to show up and give you their time. So it usually means free parking, free food, good content, and just an overall good experience, which we've tried to achieve.
Right. No, that's well said.
Yeah.
Just going, I guess, highlighting the point of the refund in your words, describe what it is, because I think it's a really fascinating concept. Just to differentiate it from mine. So my podcasts were really important that I wanted them to be in person as much as possible.
Yes.
Now next year, we're going to start reaching out on the odd weeks to basically other builders and designers and architects across the country, because I want to expand the show's reach, because I'm trying to have our listeners get some business ideas, to understand, to get to know people, but really what can they hear on this show that they can apply to their own business?
Yes.
That's important to me. But what I love about yours, just as a nuance that's different, is like you're not interacting with guests, but you have a very clear identity to your show that's got to be very strong. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. The way Sarah and I describe it, so we do very high-end video production by Kaylee Lemoyne, who is our just director. She's a fantastic videographer. We want our show to feel like you are sitting on the couch with us, either having a cup of coffee or having a glass of wine. And the way we film it is very like we invite you kind of into our space. Sarah and I are sitting on a couch, probably close together, with our shoes off in some sort of like cute or comfy outfit. And we're just having an honest conversation about just kind of BS things that we've been told, whether it's about our lives or mostly it's about our business, that we're just not really having anymore, and being vulnerable and sharing our experiences. And what we try to do each season is pick kind of one stellar guest. So in our first season, we interviewed Adriana Carrig, who runs the Little Words Project out of New York, New Jersey. And she has an interesting story because she was self-funded, started her jewelry business out of her basement in college, and now it's a multi-million-dollar bracelet company, and Taylor Swift wears her bracelets. And like we had
sorry, who's that?
Adriana Carrig. Oh, Taylor Swift. I was like, what? Yeah, which is incredible.
She's blowing up the NFL
honestly,
right now.
Love it. And I don't even care about sports. I'm like,
so
cool,
awesome.
just making people angry. Who cares?
No, making people happy.
Yeah, well, both.
I mean,
yeah.
increase of 400% of sales.
The jerseys.
Of the jersey sales, and like #1 podcast in the world.
Yes, I'm
all kinds of nuts
I'm
stuff.
like, listen to the refund, Taylor. Listen to the refund.
Come on the refund.
Oh my God.
Hey, Taylor Swift, if you're listening,
Yes,
we would
know
love you
are.
to come on the Curious Builder podcast
and
the refund. We could probably even make it a way into make you a live event. guest
Correct.
host.
Maybe
That's
do
fine.
like a performance there too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really kind of the precipice of the show. I've known Sarah for a while now, and I just adore her and her energy. And she's a fantastic creative director and brand designer. She did my branding for my JDP consult business. And I think it's important that like I do things that either make me happy, make me better, or make me money. And the only thing this podcast we're trying to figure out is the make us money part. But I love it. And Sarah and I are a good pair because she brings this creative kind of type B energy, and I'm very type A, looking at the
What do you mean
numbers.
by type B? I always hear about type A. I didn't know there was another type.
Yeah, so type B tends
That's
to
very
be...
arrogant of the type A.
I was literally going to say classic type A. Type B is...
Speaking from a classic type A.
Literally. Just a little bit more kind of relaxed. Doesn't need as strict of a like process or routine and regimen as a type A does. So like my husband, Max, who you know very well, he is type B. So when I think about a type B person, if I look at their desk, there's just like shit everywhere. They have a million tabs open. That stresses me out. I have so much order to my desk, and like I'm very focused on like what tabs are open on my computer, what I work on and when. And I think about water when I think about type B. They're just very like go with the flow. They don't need to be put under this like crazy structure. And that works really well, I think, for Sarah as a creative. For me, it like makes me break out in hives. Same thing with my husband. He's very type B, but that's why we're compatible.
If I could think of one word to describe Sarah, it would be like vibrant or colorful.
Yes.
Because she has such a big personality.
Yes.
And so I often think of bees more like your husband and my wife.
Yeah.
They seem to be more quiet, more comfortable in their space and things like that.
But I think she has the type B, but she's extroverted too, which I think helps. But I think her and I are we're a good duo because then also like her and I have a lot of fun together. We're like, we just joke around, and we're both, aiming to be in this $1 million club, which not a lot of women make it to $1 million. And we talk about all the time. She's going to get the yacht. I'm going to get the private jet. And then we're just going to share it because that's a better cost savings plan.
Do you know what's interesting? The reason that I listen to your show is I love the fact, and I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, and it's not only because I have a daughter and I love my sister and mom, but like just women are very impactful in my life.
Yeah.
And I feel like in the last 10 years, there's been such a shift in two things. One is mental health and discussing it,
Oh,
and
thank God.
the second one is just women in power and
Yeah.
women ownership and all these different things. And so, and I applaud it and I love it, but I am still a man.
Go on.
Yeah, I go on. You're still an idiot. You're still a Neanderthal caveman.
Stop.
But the point of it is I feel like you were able to very well articulate kind of the female point of view on the refund thing. So because a lot of what you're rejecting in culture is things that are sexist, things that are and that's not always about business necessarily, but I think the things that resonate with me in general, things that like, oh, and maybe it's because I've never been in corporate America. Some of the things don't apply to me because I just don't have a big enough staff to encounter some of those things.
Yeah.
But I find it very educational. And it kind of helps reset my mindset a little bit like, oh, I have to be more thoughtful of this, that, and another thing. So I can tell you that's one of the main reasons that I listen to it, actually.
Yeah. And one, thank you for being a listener. And two, like, we don't know all the answers to all the things. We're just trying to share our experiences that feel most authentic to us. And if we can help make someone feel less alone or feel understood or give them an aha moment to look at things differently, I think perspective is super important. So thanks for being a VIP listener of The Refund, Mark.
Yes, and I also think you need more live events. I am a huge fan of the live events.
They're fun.
I think, what do you think about this? So I know we can talk maybe a little bit about the live event that we have coming up.
Yes.
So on the 14th of November, you and I are going to interview Alex Lelch.
Yes.
And we're going to be at the Lowlands, which is his new wedding venue.
Super
but his
cool
tie-in
space.
to construction is that he has an audio low voltage company.
Yes.
So it was ironic to me that Jackson Schwartz, who we did our live event, has hand-blown glass in the world, but he also has the wedding venue.
Super
and now the next
fascinating.
person it's like I'm only interviewing people that have a side business of wedding venues, evidently.
Well, and I'm fascinated to talk about him. So obviously there's there's the builder piece to it, but I'm interested in just like the mechanics of owning a business in an industry that I think was totally shaken by the pandemic and has kind of seen a resurgence. And I feel like I've been to so many weddings this past year where I like need a break, but I'm so fascinated to kind of hear about his business and also his story and how he's gotten to where he's at today. So I'm super excited.
Well, and I didn't know this about him. I can't remember. We'll find out at the live event. For those interested, you can go on our website or any of our social channels and buy tickets.
Yes.
We'll talk a little bit about the VIP deal that we're doing there. But I believe he came from somewhere overseas, Lebanon, I think he said. We'll find out. I can't remember.
Awesome.
He told me in passing.
Yeah.
But part of his story here as a serial entrepreneur is him immigrating to the United States as a young child, starting a business. And that sort of embodies this beautiful concept of, quote, the American dream.
Yes.
And I don't know why it's necessarily tied to America's dream, but it's really it is inspiring to me that people would leave other parts of the world and to come to a place where they would have the freedom to start a company. Like that is their driving force. And we just built a house for somebody and her parents came from Iran, I don't know how many years ago, 30, 40 years ago, for similar circumstances. And I think having grown up in the United States and having family around me that were all entrepreneurs. I mean, I have several uncles and aunts. I mean, it's just like I don't have actually anyone in my family tree that didn't have a business, which is weird, I guess.
That's awesome.
It is
It's
great.
in the blood. It's in the DNA.
I guess, or that's just the only thing we had, if we couldn't get a job because we had too much energy.
Ding,
but,
ding.
But anyway, the point of it is I think I'd never want to lose sight of what a gift it is to, be in a country, be in a state, and be surrounded by that we can do that. And it ties in just loosely here. I'll get off my soapbox in a second. Is we talk a lot about trying to get, let's say, anyone associated with building into the trades, because there's been kind of a real talent gap lately of people that went into education, which is nothing wrong with education, college degrees, all those things, that's wonderful. But, so a huge part of the generation, might have an interest in home building. And there's so many different aspects. There is all those places, marketing, accounting, business, but the real tangible things like, being a framer, HVAC, electricians, and all these different things. But here's the thing, if you get into it and you love it, guess what? You could start your own business. And right now, because I think we had someone on where we were talking about stats, where for every 7 master plumbers that retire, only 1 journeyman is taking their place.
Wow,
so you talk about opportunity, though. Opportunity. If I was 22, 23 years old and I had an interest in being outside or just working with my hands or creating something or being part of the home industry, to get to be an electrician, a plumber, into HVAC, and there's a lot of technology in there too. If you're interested in it, you can get into it, work for a couple of years. Guess what? You could start your own plumbing company, and you could make very good money, extremely good money. Because there's obviously at some point you're going to cap out if you're an employee, or
for sure.
At some point. And so I just think there's so much opportunity there. Again, going back to this thing of starting a business, expanding what you can do. There's a lot of opportunity out there
for sure. And I think it's like you just got to figure out what your threshold is for just like challenge and trying something new and kind of being scrappy enough to figure it out on your own. And again, it's not for everybody, but for the people that love it, they really, really love it. So, yeah.
One thing that I want to make sure we get on record here, because it was such a fascinating story, and going back to your men jewelry days, and you said about being scrappy and figuring things out as you go. Tell us about the time that you pitched Nordstrom's, and was it drop shipping? I love this story. It's such a good story. It has to be told.
So, Dad, talk about, I feel like every entrepreneur has like a version of this story of just kind of like how they've gotten some sort of like break of some sort that with a big brand of some sort. So Nordstrom had carried me online for a year and a half. And how that came to be was I was at the Nordstrom, the Ridgedale location in Minnesota, which is like, they designed that store. It's a little bit more elevated than other Nordstroms. And in that Ridgedale, there is a restaurant. They have a really good, I don't know if it's a Caesar salad or salmon salad. You should definitely get it. It's a plug to eat that salad. And I was having lunch with my business partners. And we're kind of doing our monthly check-in, and one of them had asked me, well, what does it take for us to get, picked up by a Nordstrom? And I was like, I don't know, I'll just go and ask. So after lunch, I take the escalator down. I go to the manager desk, and I was like, can I talk to your store manager? I was acting as if I knew who the store manager was. And they're like, okay. So they paged down this woman named Stephanie, who is amazing, and I believe she's retired now. But I basically I was wearing all my jewelry, and I pitched her. I was like, hey, what do you think about doing a pop-up with men? It's, women owned. It's my jewelry business. I'll do everything. You just got to say yes and give me the space for the day. And she looked at my displays, and she was like, here's my card. She's like, I got to think about it. She's like, we've done this before with an author and a book release. I don't know how jewelry would work, but just let me think about it. You can reach me at, this email and phone number. And I was like, great. She didn't say no. So then for 3 weeks, it was like every Friday I called Nordstrom and asked for Stephanie, because if people in retail, they're not at a desk. They're literally on the floor managing their team, helping customers. And I bet that's a high volume Nordstrom store. So I called Stephanie for 3 weeks until she finally was like, okay, Jordyn.
Did she answer the phone, or she called you back?
No, so she answered the phone. She would get to it, or I'd leave her a message. So she answered, and by the third time she was like, okay, Jordyn, come on April 14th or whatever the date was. You'll have the space from 12 to 4. Bring in your own displays, manage your own point of sale. We'll kind of do this our way, and then we'll go from there. You could take 100% of the sales. We just want to support you. And I was like, yes. So then I was making all the jewelry myself at the time. So for 2 days straight, I was sitting on my floor. There were beads and gemstones everywhere. My fingers, my thumbs were bleeding because I was making so much stuff.
Oh my word.
And I had my pop-up there. I had sold out of stuff, and I think our goal must have been I can't remember what the goal was, but I know that I exceeded it. So I'd made $5,000 in 4 hours. So I had exceeded expectations. I sold out of stuff. It was super successful. And then a couple months later, they reached out to me, and they're like, hey, we want to do this again. It was such a success. Let's do it again. So then this time I do it again. I have a production team that I work with out in New York to make all the jewelry. I go, we set the goal again we set it at 5,000 this time.
Hang on one second.
Yes.
You were building it by hand before, but now you've outsourced it to New York?
Yes. So I found a manufacturer out in New York who would help assemble the pieces for me at a good price point, because I had priced everything. That was the first thing I did when I got funding, was got super clear on my materials and time so that my margins were good. So I had priced it appropriately, obviously with the support of my business partners and just from a financial standpoint, so that when I needed to outsource, I could afford it to be, made in the U.S. Because a lot of jewelry probably gets, made and assembled overseas just because it's cheap, and I didn't want to do that. Also quality control. So, and I would probably do that once a quarter. I would send a bunch of materials and have this production house batch make it for me. Melinda Designs is the name of them, and Melinda is a wonderful team, and she did a really good job. So I had all of this stuff made, and then I did another pop-up with Nordstrom, and the goal was set at 5,000. I remember I did 11,000 in sales that day, and I think it was the highest grossing sales in that store, that department that day, which was awesome. And because I'm so driven by sales, it's just in my blood. And they took a cut because this time they had skin in the game. They're like, this chick can sell, we're going to do a cut. So then I'm living off the high of the second pop-up, and I don't hear anything. a few months go by and I get an email in my inbox, and it's from a buyer out of Seattle in Nordstrom. And I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? And this woman's like, so we heard you've been doing these pop-ups in Minneapolis and you've been exceeding sales, and we want to know if you do drop ship. And I just remember being like, oh, we absolutely do drop ship. You just let me know what you need. And then I just remember putting my phone down and I was like, what the fuck is drop ship? And then kind of the last piece of how this all came to be. So drop ship essentially is where the store will put it online and then you fulfill the orders. But the thing about a big box store like Nordstrom is you have to use this is where the, unsexy parts of retail come in. This is logistics. You have to use a certain software. You have to use a certain type of packaging.
Because you have to conform to their system at this point.
Correct.
So the boutique aspect of it, the uniqueness, now it's like that's all charm and dandy, but now it's scale time.
Correct.
And yeah.
And you have to maintain a 98% fulfillment rate within 24 hours, or they'll give you the boot. And
whoa.
So you can only miss one fulfillment.
So then you have to really stockpile, and then how do you? Wow. Okay, yeah. How in the world did you navigate that? Because
stress, crying, and an inventory closet.
Is this when you're in the? Yeah, tell us. So you're what, in the inventory closet?
So as I was like getting everything ramped up, I was also opening up a 3-month holiday store at the Mall of America, and my staff couldn't start until 2 weeks after the opening date. So I was working 14 to 15 days straight from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then I was also taking phone calls from Nordstrom because they were like checking to make if like my SKU numbers were correct, or that like they verified that the boxes were the correct size and the correct material and that were, sustainable, etc. And I have this video and I'll have to show it to you, Mark, of like I'm on the phone with Nordstrom, like eating like Wetzel's pretzels, like corn dogs in an inventory closet at Mall of America at like 9 o'clock at night. And I'm like, just living the dream here, just really getting a partnership with Nordstrom.
You know what that reminds me of? It's like the pictures they have of like Steve Jobs like in a garage in Silicon Valley in like 1970, or like Bill Gates, right? It's like wires everywhere and computers in the background in their garage. So that was you in an inventory closet.
Literally. And I, to this day, like that experience of just running a business, and I always tell people I have retail businesses, like, please call me before you go and enter an agreement with a big box retail. If you're going to do it, like, let me just look at the contract and let me just give you the resources that I have so you don't have to suffer. Because again, like, and then everyone thought it was so great that Nordstrom carried me, and eventually like you just become a number on a spreadsheet. You don't do X amount in sales. And again, like I had a really good experience. It did good for my brand, but like, again, if you tie your success to that, you're going to be really discouraged, or it's not going to feel what you think it is. Because I remember like I was just so tired when Nordstrom had picked me up. I was so burnt out, and I was like, man, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, that's just retail too. But I would say if people are in retail and I can give you kind of the candid point of view, because sometimes it's really good for businesses to get big box retailers, but it could put you out of business if you're not set up to scale, which I thankfully was.
It'd be really interesting to get Katie Cath's background was in owning a restaurant.
Yes,
right?
her and I have talked about that.
I would love to get the guys. That would be a fascinating live event, by the way, of having one of you talk about retail and one of you talk about restaurants, because I am very confused. Who doesn't like a cute little boutique shop? Who doesn't like a really cozy place to eat? But the margins from I was just talking to a restaurateur. He's part of my networking group. They're making like single digit percent points, and you're like, why would anyone?
It's volume. It's a volume based business.
I don't get that. It's like, isn't that the kind of say like, if the Titanic has a hole in it, driving faster doesn't sinks you faster. So I don't get how that, just because you have more volume, I just don't understand how that plays well. But
I would say any service-based industry like retail or restaurants, I think everyone should work in that industry because it'll teach you a lot about sales. And I think it's not for everybody, and there are just some models that work better than others. But yeah, it's all numbers. You got to sell.
One quick story here. I think I've shared it before on the podcast, but I don't think I've told you before, where I had heard once that there was a builder that was looking for people that are better at customer service for their company. I think it was maybe even a plumber, actually, I think is the story, down in Florida. And they went into restaurants and they hired a bunch of maitre d's, and people that were at high-end restaurants because they knew their customer service skills were off the charts, their memory, because you can't write stuff down, you just have to memorize all these things. And they trained them how to be a plumber. They trained them, and they just knocked it out of the park because their service was so great. Isn't that amazing?
I feel like the best entrepreneurs at one point loved serving, because I served too, and I ran a restaurant while I was in college in Chicago part-time.
Maybe that's my part. So is your advice to me as you close out working with me is do I need to go get a part-time job at like a restaurant?
I think it would teach you a lot about people, and it's like you have 30 seconds to make somebody like you and sell them a bottle of wine. And I remember I was like selling bottles of wine when I was 19.
actually think I would love
I think you would too, but then you'd also probably pick up smoking cigarettes and drinking Red Bull on your breaks.
Yeah, probably not. I also would probably do it for like one day and be like, I'm good.
Yeah,
I do this for like a day.
But for people that like want to learn, and you can make good money while you're doing it in college, I like highly recommend it. It just teaches you good people skills.
Right.
You don't have to do it forever, but when I did it, I loved it.
I agree. And who doesn't like good service? And nobody
Amen.
likes bad.
And
And nobody
you get
likes
free
bad.
food.
And nobody likes bad service.
And if it's a good restaurant, you get really good free food. I mean, it's a win-win. You're fed.
So we're on the Dutton here for an hour, so we'll cut it out here because you and I could talk for 20 more days. Two last things. What just because I always end the podcast this way. What just some things that you do to continue your education and learning? What do you like to do?
Big reader. I love reading fiction. So I love, it's like mind yoga. I love fiction, thrillers, mystery is my jam. So that's just like for funsies. Like professionally, I will go through just different coursework. So like Harvard actually has a lot of free online courses you can take. I actually just got certified. This was paid, a Leading with Finance program, just because I wanted to be smarter about financials and how do you properly, evaluate a business that's trying to be sold in the next 5 to 10 years. It was one of the hardest courses I've ever taken. I was like,
it's Harvard.
Yeah, it literally, I couldn't believe that I got in, but my certificate is coming in the mail, which is super exciting. But yeah, I constantly seek knowledge in a way that I can. So through online courses is a big one. But yeah, reading, coursework is typically how I grow.
Sorry, I guess I do have another question.
Yeah.
Where do most of your clients find you?
Referral.
Like mine was referral. Well, I guess I'd met you at BizCom, which I guess we will have to save for another time.
I would say, events, workshops, or referrals. And I typically book 3 to 6 months out. And I'm not booking any new clients for the rest of the year. Like my books are closed. And so if people need help scaling, growing, cleaning up their ops, that would start in next year, which makes the most sense for folks that are trying to start the new year.
Well, and you also, we didn't touch on it that much. You also do keynote speaking.
Oh, yeah.
Which we're going to talk about that. Yeah, wow, there's a lot more we didn't talk about.
That's okay. Honestly, the topics that we talked about are just growing and scaling a business, and knowing when to leave a business is typically what I'll talk about. Any keynotes or workshops are all just kind of business-centric of I'm just trying to share knowledge. There's really no gatekeeping here, if I can be honest with you, about how to raise your prices, how to make sure that you can scale your business, all of those things, and just even getting funding. Those are all topics that will either workshop or I'll keynote. It just depends on what the audience wants. And I try to keep it entertaining. I try and keep it fun because sometimes this stuff can get heavy.
Yeah. What are you most looking forward to in 25 or 24?
I was like, oh my God, where am I going to be in 2 years
Yeah.
from now? Oh my God, what a great question. What am I looking forward to? I am just trying to get through the end of the year, and I want to just take some more trips. I'm trying to travel and visit. I've got a sister that lives in Hawaii, so I want to go visit her at the end of the year maybe. But I just think there's so much potential for my business. I can't wait to recap and see how far I've come this year and see I exceeded my goals last year. Now what does 2024 look like? So I'm just excited for the unknown. I feel like that's a classic entrepreneur I think there's so much potential happening. I also would like to, have a baby. So my husband and I are hopefully going to try. I would like to be pregnant next year. I'm putting it out into the universe.
I love it.
But that's personal. So I may be pregnant on stage keynoting or pregnant working with my clients.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. It's the most, it's just a wonderful ride. So.
Yes.
And then now Sarah can give you all her advice because she was extremely pregnant at your last
live event. She has been pregnant. I told her, I was like, we got to film when you're not pregnant. So we're trying to also film when she's not pregnant too. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Yes.
Excited for all that you do for us. And if you like what you hear, you will be with us as a co-host coming up at our next live event.
Yes, please come. I'd love to meet and chat with everybody in person, and we'll have a good time. And you should definitely do the VIP part of the event because it's going to be super fun. I don't know if it's a surprise or not, but it's worth every penny.
It's pretty cool. I think we're doing we're having a mixologist come in. I think we'll be limiting it to 20 people an hour before. And we're going to do actually I named it the other day. I don't know if you saw it. No. It's going to be called Holly Smokes instead of Holy Smokes. And Holly like Christmas, because we're getting close to the holidays.
It's going to be perfect.
It's going to be a very unique custom cocktail that they'll walk you through it, teach you how to do it, and then you can take it home.
I need a custom cocktail for Thanksgiving this year.
And it'll also be a mocktail as well. So there'll be a couple options there. And then the VIPs also get a pretty sweet swag bag.
As
well as front row seats, as well as some other perks. So.
And you get to hang out with us, which is what everybody wants to do that.
Yeah, don't. Now everyone's gonna wait. Oh, people are canceling.
Oh, wait, hold on. I'm seeing ticket sales just
drop. Just plummet. People are asking for a refund faster than the Twin Cities Marathon.
No. Awesome. Well, thank you, Mark.
Yep.
You're doing great work connecting and making growing this community. So I'm super excited.
Sounds
so
good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you much.
Thanks for listening to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like what you listen to, please give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It really means a lot. It's a great way for us to just understand what you like about the podcast and what we can keep doing. So like and review, and please share with your friends and family. Find out more at curiousbuilderpodcast.com.